At the start of the course, I told you, if you remember, that business activities is producing goods or services or procurement of goods or services. So the classification of business activities is based on that. Let's now understand the classification of business activities. See, you can see this chart. Business has been divided into industry and commerce. So under industry we have the primary, secondary and tertiary. So these are the subdivisions under industry. When it comes to commerce, it is trade and auxiliary to trade which is there. Okay, again under primary we have the extractive and the genetic industry. Then in secondary we have the manufacturing and the construction industry. Again under manufacturing we have the analytical, synthetic, processing and assembling. Moving to commerce, under trade we have the internal and the external trade. Internal is further divided into wholesale and retail. External deals with your import, export and export. Okay. Auxiliary to trade is divided into transportation, warehousing, insurance, banking and advertisement. So we'll understand what are these one by one as we move ahead. So let's start with industry. Okay. Now what is industry? Industry is all about producing goods or services. Okay. So any kind of goods or services which I am producing would come under industry. For example, leather manufacturing. Okay. Even the textile industry would come under industry, that is, it would, because it deals with manufacturing of goods, it deals with manufacturing of leather, that is the reason it will come under industry. Okay. Now you remember under industry I said the subtypes or the subdivisions was primary. So primary is basically when it deals with extraction of natural resources. Okay. Whereas extractive industry deals with mining, hunting and lumbering. Okay. Further, we had understood about the genetic industry. See, genetic industry is nothing but when a certain kind of species of flora or fauna is grown in the market or by certain people. So farming, forestry, even poultry, they all will come under genetic industry. Extractive, always remember, is you're going to extract the natural resources, whereas in genetic industry you're going to grow a certain kind of plant or animal for the purpose of business. Okay. Now moving further, we have the secondary industry. You remember after primary we had the secondary industry. What is secondary industry? See, here the extracted resources, that is the resources which we extracted under the primary industry, they would be used as raw materials. Okay. So if a business is using those as raw materials, it will be classified under secondary industry. We will deal with the examples as we go. For example, we have this manufacturing industry. Okay. This is nothing but, if I take example of sugar, how do we get sugar? We get sugar from sugar cane. So production of sugar from sugar cane would be example of secondary industry. Similarly, production of cereals, for example, you have these cornflakes which you eat daily. So that is also an example of secondary industry. Now under this, the manufacturing industry is being divided into analytical industry, synthetic and processing industry and also assembling industry. So let's understand all of them one by one. What is analytical? See, here the raw materials are analyzed and then they get separated. Okay. So they get separated in different finished goods. The best example of analytical industry is your crude oil. When you extract the crude oil, you process it, and in that scenario it gets processed and bifurcated into petrol. Okay. Then it gets bifurcated into diesel and then finally into kerosene and coal. Then comes your synthetic industry. What do I mean by synthetic industry? It is an industry wherein I'll combine two products, that is two or more raw materials, to produce the finished goods. Here the best example would be cement. How do I produce cement? I have to mix concrete, gypsum and coal to get cement. Similarly, fragrance industry, it is also an example. If I have to produce a particular kind of fragrance, then I would be using 2 or more raw material to get that particular fragrance. Now we have processing industry. Now what is processing industry? See, the final products in this industry are produced by using the raw materials and semi-raw materials in the different stages of production. Okay, for example, textile, paper, sugar, these all comes under processing industry. Processing industry is when you process the raw materials or semi-raw materials into various stages, okay, to get the finished products. So the different stages of production are involved and hence it is known as processing industry. For example, the textile, paper and sugar. Here we get different products. The entire industries, all these 3 industries, when they have to produce the final goods, that is the sugar or paper or garments, they have to go through various processes and hence they come under processing industry. Then we have assembling industry. See, here what happens is various parts or components are joined together to get the final product. Okay, so when I am saying vehicle, a vehicle is, if you imagine a car, it has various subparts which are assembled into it. So to make a car, I need all those subparts and hence those come under assembling. Same goes with your electrical equipments. Even they have to be assembled. Okay. Now, moving further, we have construction industry. What is construction industry? See, construction industry is concerned with erecting and construction of roads, bridges, railways. Okay. So when we are building products, it is known as construction industries. Already gave you example of bridges, roads, dams, railways. This all will come under construction of bridges, under construction industry. The next was your tertiary industry after secondary industry. If you see, remember the flow chart, it had tertiary industry. Now what is that? See, tertiary industry is those industry or those businesses which provide support services to primary and secondary industry. See, if I have to run a primary business or if I have to run a secondary business, I need to deal with lots of people, and that is the reason there would be a lot of exchange of cash, right? So to exchange, because of that exchange of cash, I would require a banking system. Similarly, we already discussed that business risk is always involved and hence we need to take insurance. So when we are running any industry under the primary or the secondary industries, if we have any company, then we will have to take insurance. So insurance companies would come under tertiary industry. Okay. Similarly, how would people come to know about your goods or services? Only through advertisement. So advertisement industry is a tertiary industry because it is providing support to the primary and the secondary industry. The same goes with warehousing, transporting and communication. See, warehousing is that you go and store your products till they are sold to the final consumers. Transportation is when you have to dispatch the goods from the place of production to the place of utilization. That is when you have to shift. For example, you are producing the goods in Jaipur, you have to transport that from Jaipur to Chennai. So the transportation industry will come into play at that time and hence it would be classified under the tertiary industry. The communication, see, nowadays we have mobile phones, we have fax machines, we have computers, we have email to do. So telecommunication helps in communicating with a buyer who may be situated in a different city or different country altogether. So communication industry also provides support to primary and secondary industry and hence it is classified under tertiary industry. Now let's move further. Now see, we understood that production of goods gets classified into different kind of industries, like we understood the primary, secondary and tertiary. Okay, now let's move to commerce. See, trade is very important in business. A business person cannot just keep on producing goods and distributing the goods by himself. If he has to produce goods on mass scale, he requires people, which we call them as middlemen, who would distribute the goods to the final consumer. And that is the reason there are people who procure goods and services to be sold to the final consumer. For example, if you want a soap, you would go to your local departmental or your Kiryana store, right? Now, Kiryana store is an example of a retailer who has procured goods from the wholesaler, or let's say from the manufacturer, to be sold to the ultimate consumer. Okay, so remember that commerce are those activities which help directly or indirectly in distribution of goods or services. It is required in the business arena because a producer cannot do all the activities all by himself, and if he wishes to produce the goods and services on a large scale, he would require the help of this middleman, that is the trader. Now, when it comes to trade, it relates to buying and selling of goods. That is what we have been calling as procurement of goods, okay, and services. Now, trade has been further classified into internal trade or home trade. As the name suggests, internal trade or home trade is buying and selling within the geographical limits of the country. Okay, so when I am buying goods and selling them in India itself, this would come under internal trade. Internal trade is further divided into wholesale and retail. Few seconds back, I just told you that the Kiryana guy would go and buy the goods from wholesaler. See what exactly happens. The manufacturer produces bulk of goods. Now these wholesaler, for a margin, procure those goods on a wholesale basis. When I am saying wholesale basis, they would go and purchase, let's say if the manufacturer is selling sugar, the wholesaler will go and purchase 100 kilograms of sugar, right? Now he will go further and distribute that sugar to various retailers. Now these retailers would either come to them and buy 5 kgs of sugar or 10 kgs or 25 kgs depending on the need. That is where they are situated, what is the consumer demand they believe would be there for the sugar which they wish to sell. Okay, so this is the difference between wholesale and retailer. The wholesale person or the wholesale businessman buys the goods in bulk and then sell them to retailers. Okay, just for the purpose of understanding, see, when it comes to Kiryana store, it is an example of a retail store. But what about Big Bazaar? What about these kind of stores which we have? For example, D-Mart, Big Bazaar. See, when they buy, they don't buy from a wholesaler. Although they are selling it directly to the consumer, and hence they should be classified under the retailer, but they will not be called as retailer because they are functioning both as a wholesaler and retailer. What they do is they buy in bulk from manufacturers and then they sell to the final consumers. Okay, now because they have the power of buying in bulk quantities, hence the role of wholesaler gets eliminated out here, and they are doing the duty of both the wholesaler and the retailer, and that is the reason you get the goods in those supermarkets at a cheap price. Okay, now remember to distinguish or to remember the difference between wholesaler and retailer. Remember, retailer sell goods to final consumer. When it comes to wholesaler, he will be never in contact with the final consumer. He would be selling it directly to the retailers only. Now moving further, external trade or foreign trade. See, as home trade was within the geographical limits, if you are buying and selling goods outside the geographical limits, it would be classified as foreign trade. Okay, now foreign trade is further classified into export, import and entrepot. Export is when you are selling your goods outside the country. Import is when you are importing the goods into the country. That is, you are buying the goods into the country for distribution to the final consumers in the home country. What is entry port? If you wish to import the goods for exporting them to some other country, then that is known as entry port. Okay. Now moving further, just like industry, even auxiliary to trade are same. That is, we require the insurance industry, the banking or the advertisement industry to be in place for trading activities, right? Like Big Bazaar will have to advertise the goods. Okay, so there would be a advertisement industry for them. Similarly, the banking, because there are transactions happening between the wholesaler and retailer, or there are other transactions which are happening between the retailer and the client or ultimate consumer. That is the reason we have this banking industry in place. So all these 6 industries help or give support to the trade, and that is the reason auxiliary to trade are divided into the similar 6 industries which we studied earlier.